Good evening. Welcome to the November 9th, 2020 meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission. If everyone would stand, please. Commissioner Craig Lynch will lead us in our prayer and our pledge. Craig.
Please. We thank you for this day, and we thank you for the blessings you've given us. You bless us each and every day, and we truly thank you for that. We thank you for the country we live in. We pray, Heavenly Father, that you'll be with our country. May our country become unified, and let's move forward and let our country be what she should be. We pray, Heavenly Father, for a recovery from this awful pandemic. We understand there's a vaccine that's on the horizon. We pray that it will be successful and we'll be able to get some relief from this. We continue to pray, Heavenly Father, that you'll be with us and as a country, a great country that we have. And we remember this Wednesday is Veterans Day, Heavenly Father. And if it wasn't for all the veterans that's gone on before us, I couldn't stand here tonight and give this prayer and in a free country and without anything happening to any of us, Heavenly Father. And we just thank you for that. Thank you for veterans. Thank you for all our blessings. And we pray that you'll be with us tonight in all our deliberations. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Face the flag, please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. This meeting of the Rutherford County Regional Planning Commission is being conducted electronically pursuant to Governor Bill Lee's Executive Order Number 16. I would ask for a motion that conducting the meeting electronically is necessary to protect public health, safety, and welfare in light of the coronavirus.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Commissioners, your response will also serve as our roll call. Doug.
Who seconded that? Just
Charlotte.
Thank you. Bear with me a second. I don't do this on a regular basis. So, okay. Charlotte P. Chip Pinion. Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Everwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
We do have a quorum.
How about minutes, Doug? Do we have any?
Yes, sir. We should have minutes for the April 27th, 2020 meeting.
Very good. Pettis, you reviewed those minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I have read over those minutes. I found no problem with those, and I make a motion that they be approved.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of our last meeting. I guess we need to call the roll.
Yes, I'll take care of that. Charlotte P.
Yes.
Chip's not here. Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Everwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion
Thank
passes.
you. We have two items on our agenda that have been pulled or withdrawn. The first is item 6BA, preliminary plan approval number, 6BA, submitted for final plat approval. The item number is 20-2089, re-subdivision of Lot 2, Section 2, Pleasant View. 6BA has been pulled. The second item that has been pulled is 6D under zoning request, 6DE REZ 20-2024. This is for the industrial development out on Sulphur Springs. That item has been pulled and will not be heard tonight. Okay, under new business, item 6A, preliminary plan approval. 6AA 20-1013, Griffith Cove, 89 lots on 36.27 acres, zoned PUD, located off Copenhagen Drive and Carol Ann Street. D.R. Horton is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The preliminary plan for this development was approved by the Planning Commission back at their December 10th, 2018 meeting, so it's been a good couple of years. Preliminary plan approvals are valid for 2 years unless a notice to proceed has been issued by the Planning and Engineering Department and construction activity begun and occurred within the last 3 months, or a final plat based on that preliminary plan has been recorded. Neither of those criteria have been met. So the Planning Commission has the authority in the subdivision regulations to grant a one-time, one-year extension from the original date of approval, which is what they're asking for tonight. Information from the applicant indicates the recent pandemic has caused their plans to be delayed at this time, but they feel that the extra hour, or the extra year, should give them ample time to get started up. So nothing has changed with the development. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So, Doug, no plan modification?
Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is Griffith Cove, and I've got these backwards. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Doug,
I'm trying to do 3 things at one time here, so that didn't work out very well. So everybody can just say, Doug, you're an idiot.
Take a deep breath,
Time
Doug.
out. Okay.
We're good.
Okay, the PUD for this property was approved by the Board of Commissioners back in October of this year. Staff asked the developer to shift some of the lots on Copenhagen Drive in order to provide more area for stormwater management. The number of lots and the road network is unaffected by this change, and that would just be a minor deviation of the PUD. Most of our comments have been addressed. Those that remain should be addressed. Do you have a couple comments you wanted to make on that? Mike's got a few comments. Again, I apologize.
Just, the road section, these are going to be connector roads in the future. We're showing long-term turnarounds, cul-de-sacs here, and we just, these 3 stub streets, one here by the TVA easement, and then one here on the eastern side, will be extended in the future. And we just ask that they make these roads collector standards. It's a little bit thicker pavement, stone sections, so they'll hold up for more traffic. And they have done the western, the middle, and this eastern one, but they neglected to upsize the roads to get between the 2 collector roads. So I'm just asking that they increase the thickness of pavement on these 2 smaller streets, Saddle Horse Lane and Wisteria, I believe. So that's just minor stuff, and that's all I had on Griffith Cove. But we will maybe have some more tweaking to do with the pond design. Originally, they had a pond on this north end of the property. This existing tributary flows from north to south, so I was asking if they could take lots away from this area and put the pond out there, but this is all now all detention area, but we might have some tweaking once we look at the construction plans. But other than that, it is in good order.
Recommended approval?
Yes, sir.
From a preliminary
Yes, sir.
protected.
Mr. Chairman, this is a preliminary approval.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, I would make that motion with the comments from staff
Thank you, David.
to approve.
Charlotte and Lee. Already been done, David. Thank you.
Yeah, make sure you use your mics. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve 20-1013 for Griffith Cove preliminary plan. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Thank you. Charlotte P.
Yes.
Craig Lynch.
Yes.
David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Edis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 6AB, preliminary plan For item number 18-1015, Staghorn one-year extension, 123 lots on 62.44 acres, zone PUD, located off Midland Road. Larry Smotherman is the applicant. Doug?
All the things I said at the beginning of the last application are for this, so I apologize for that. Just briefly again, this is expired. The Planning Commission does have the ability in the subdivision regulations to grant a one-year extension to the development. That's what they're asking for today. The subdivision itself has not changed, so I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Staff's okay?
Yes, sir.
Make the motion.
Second.
I have a motion, Craig, and a second by Mike. Any other questions or comments? Okay, we have a motion to approve 18-1015 Staghorn one-year extension preliminary plan. Call the roll.
Charlotte P.? Yes. Opinion? Oh, I'm sorry, he's still in here. Craig Lynch? Yes. David Jones?
Yes.
Jim Averwater?
Yes.
Lee Bogle?
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth?
Yes.
Mike Cush?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Rhonda Allen?
Yes.
Jeff Phillips?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item 6B, these items are submitted for site plan approval. 6BA has been pulled. 6BB, the item number is 20-2098, Emory Road subdivision, 4 lots on 1.99 acres, zoned RM, located off of Emory Road. Chad Christensen is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The application that was originally submitted in what's on your agenda packets today said 4 lots. The reason it's only 3 now is because one of the lots they were originally showing was going to be an access easement. They made it a separate lot for some reason, and we told them that wasn't going to work, so they incorporated it into one of the lots. So that's why it went from a 4-lot to a 3-lot subdivision. Actually, the applicant had submitted a plat for this one lot, for the first lot, earlier this year, but never recorded the plat. He's since decided to split the remaining property. We advised that all the lots should be on the same plat, which is why you're seeing this here today. That little discussion I just had about the cross-access easement on Lot 4, that's been resolved. Also, all of our other comments have been addressed on this. This plat is now in good order with that change that they made on that one lot. So with that, we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to any staff comments.
Jim?
Second.
Thank you, Lee. There's a motion and a second to approve item number 20-2098, Emory Road subdivision, final plat. Call the roll.
You have a question?
I'm sorry, Charlotte.
These are really small lots. Are there any other lots that small in that area?
Well, the lots are, I mean, they're minimum 15,000 square feet. I mean, they're not, they meet the minimums of the district. What size are they? Is there a lot to them?
Good question.
Yeah, one's about a little over 3/4 of an acre, and the other 2 are half-acre lots.
25,000 square feet, the minimum.
Yeah. So they look small, probably because of the scale of the plat, but they meet the minimums of and then some of the district.
Other questions? Once again, we have a motion and a second to approve. Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Opinion? Sorry. Craig Lynch? Yes. David Jones?
Yes.
Jim Averwater?
Yes.
Lee Bogle?
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth?
Yes.
Mike Cush?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Rhonda Allen?
Yes.
Jeff Phillips?
Yes.
Motion carries.
6BC, item number 20-2099, Creeks Bend, Section 2, Phase 4, 28 lots on 13.52 acres, zoned RM, located off Crooked Creek. John T. Holloway is the applicant. This includes their fire hydrant waiver request. Doug?
Yes, sir, thank you. The preliminary plan, or plat actually, for this development was approved by the Planning Commission back in March of 2018, so it was a preliminary plan. That was after we made the change. The final plat appears to be consistent with that preliminary approval. Houses in this development, similar to the other sections, are required to have residential sprinkler systems because the water lines in that area can't support the hydrants, so a fire hydrant will be required. Again, all the other sections of the subdivision have had the same requirement as well. The rest of our comments have been addressed. The plat in and of itself is in good order. Mike, did you have any other? And yeah, we have no other comments. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff?
Make a motion to approve. Doug, and I'm just curious, the way this is worded, did we know that the houses would require sprinkling 2 years ago, or has
Yeah,
that
this whole development, I mean, this development's been going on for several years.
Okay.
It needed one from the start. So yes, sir.
Okay. Motion to approve.
And a second.
I have a motion by Mike and a second by Lee. Any other questions or comments? Any? Okay, once again, a motion and a second to approve item 20-2099 Creeks Bend, Section 2, Phase 4. Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Yes. Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth. Yes. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 6BD, 20-2100 Juniper Acres, re-subdivision of lots 19, 20, 24, and 26, and combination of parcels 14.01 and 13.01, 4 lots on 6.09 acres, zoned RM, located off Juniper Drive and Big Oak Drive. There are multiple applicants for this request. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicants are proposing to shift lot lines, which would result in the elimination of 2 tracts that are currently landlocked. When you look at the map that's on your agenda packets on your iPads, our GIS planner, Eric McMillan, did up a little thing that kind of shows you what it is that they're proposing to do with the new lines. So this actually results in a better situation, more squared up lots, and again, 2 of the landlocked tracts are being eliminated, so it's actually improving the situation. Since this plat does involve more than 2 parcels, staff can't approve it administratively, but we are supportive of this. Our comments have been addressed. This plat is in good order, so we'd recommend approval and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Doug. We have a motion by Craig and a second by Jim. Other questions or comments? Once again, a motion and a second to approve 20-2100 Juniper Acres re-subdivision of lots 19, 20, 24, 26, and a combination of parcels 14 and 13. Other questions? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Item 6BE, final plat for 20-2101, 675 Baker Road, 3 lots on approximately 11 acres located along Baker Road. Justin Harris and Betty Adams are the applicants. Includes a waiver for an off-site soil easement. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant, again, is proposing to shift lot lines among these 3 tracts. And again, since it involves more than 2 parcels, staff cannot approve it administratively. One of the existing soil sites for Lot 3 will cross the property line onto land being transferred to the Lot 1, which is what's necessitating the waiver request. Most of our comments, for the most part, have been addressed. Mike, I think you had 1 or 2 on here you wanted to mention.
Just one. Lot 1, they do call out a minimum pad, minimum floor elevation. We just need that to be highlighted a little bit more so it's not missed at building permit phase. Maybe just an asterisk at near Lot 1 number, and then corresponding asterisk down here at the note, just to make sure it's not missed.
Questions?
So this is not creating any new lots, it's just juggling around a
It is
property line?
creating a new lot. There are 2 lots right now. Lot 2 will be this center house here. Lot 3 will be this parcel here, and then what Doug was talking about, part of their septic system will be crossing the line. That's what we're granting a waiver. This Lot 1 will be like an L-shaped, and let me get back to that.
Yeah, that, while he's doing that, that house on lot, I guess the one in the middle, was actually a separate lot at one time. Lots 2 and 1 were together at one time. Several, I think about, probably 10 years ago, they combined them into one lot, and they're just tracking it off again, and then shifting some of the lot lines around. So you're not going to, I mean, beyond the one house that might be able to be built on Lot 1, I mean, there's already existing houses on 2 and 3, so you're not going to see much more out of that.
But Lot 1 will be encompass all of that land behind the 2 existing
Correct.
homes?
Yes. Be like an L, a backward L, kind of. Or an L, practically, yeah.
This part that's on Lot 1, is that in use or is that just reserve? You have to have so much soil site and you have so much that's...
I believe well, we sent the link to the surveyor, Doyle Elkins. I'm not sure if he's on the call or not, but I'm not sure which one, if that's actually is that the backup or if that's the primary. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, but I don't guess it'd matter.
Yeah. I don't think
I'm here, Doug.
Oh, okay. Doyle's here. Doyle, can you answer that question?
Repeat it, please. I'm sorry.
The soil site on the soil site for the easements on the back of the property, back of Lot 3, that's going to be on. Is that where their current soil site is that they're using, or is that their backup area?
Since we're COVID and I'm not at the office and able to have all the notes, and I wasn't privy to them right away, I believe that the whole soil site, the soil area in use is going to be part of the easement. The secondary is all on the site, if I remember correctly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions?
Yes. Did I hear that the Lot 1 the house would have to be elevated? Does that mean it's in a floodplain?
Local drainage issues, sinkholes and more sinkholes, and more sinkholes.
The plan for that, excuse me, sorry about that. The plan for the lot is to add it onto the bigger parcel behind it later, I believe. I don't think it's ever going to be a buildable lot. I mean, right now, there's no plans for a new house.
Mike, I don't see a soil site on
That's
site
what I was just
1.
talking to Doug. I didn't see a soil site on this one.
And we've been talking with Mandy about that. There's been no evaluation on Lot 1 at all.
Oh, there is a note. It says no building permit issued for Lot 1 until approved by Rutherford County Fire Department and Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation.
Well, basically, they would have to do a soil analysis. It's a non-buildable lot, so if it's approved, they would just have to find some soils and then do a resub of that lot to add it on there.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve, subject to any staff comments.
Jim?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 20-2101 for Baker Road. Other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Yes. Excuse me. Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth. Mike Cush.
Yes.
Bettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Item 6C, these are items submitted for site plan approval. 6CA, item number 18-3012, Sulphur Springs Market, construction of 4,500 square feet convenience store and leasable area plus 5,184 fueling canopy area, zoned CS, located off Sulphur Springs Road. Tri-State Petroleum is the applicant. Doug?
Yes, sir. Thank you. The site plan was originally approved by the Planning Commission back in September of 2018. Site plan approvals are valid for 18 months unless a building permit is obtained. Since no permits were ever obtained for this development, the site plan has expired. The site plan itself is in good order, but we do have some concerns with the proposed left turn lane into the development and how it coordinates with another convenience market adjacent to 840 and Sulphur Springs Road, which is actually a little further on today's agenda. We were in the process of looking at that. Mike, do you just want to go ahead and talk about that now? I will say on your iPads, there is you'll see that there is a file on there that shows the proposed turn lane improvements that they want to do for this and that other item that's a couple down on the agenda, the other Primetime C store. You'll see if you have a problem finding it, let me know, but it's, I believe the name of it, let me just go back here. Yeah, it's called, it says 18-3012, the Sulphur Springs Road Turn Lane Exhibit. So that'll be the one he's talking about, and Mike, it should be on the big screen.
I'll pull that too.
And I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
This thing looks just like it did 18 months ago whenever we
Yes, sir.
approved it.
Yeah, there hasn't been any, beyond the turn lane stuff we'll talk about, there hasn't been any changes beyond that.
Right.
And the recommendation is to reapprove.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, if I may, Chairman.
Sure. Mike?
This is the 840 Sulphur Springs interchange on the west side of the screen there. So the Sulphur Springs Market will be this yellow parcel on the north side of Sulphur Springs Road, and a little bit later down you'll see the Primetime C store on the south side, a little bit farther to the west. So in looking at the turn-in movements of vehicles, they're going to need some turn lane coordination. This one did have a turn lane with it, but when looking at this site plan, the turn lanes will overlap. So what we're going to have to do is kind of combine the turn lanes together. And if you can see my cursor, it's kind of disappeared on there. But on the north side, where you see this oval island, is the Sulphur Springs Market. And then just south of Timberlake Drive will be the Primetime C store. So what the design team has come up with is a continuous left turn lane that both stores can utilize. So, but there's some tweaking and coordinating and some additional work that needs to be done on that. But we're generally happy with what they've proposed for this.
Explain additional tweaking. They won't be allowed. They won't be allowed to build until that tweaking has been approved by you guys.
Yes, sir. They're going from a roadside ditch section, and they're proposing to use, because of right-of-way constraints, they're proposing to use curb and gutter in this 3-lane section through the middle of the development. And we'll have to redo the drainage, look at inlets. We'll have to, some additional grade work will need to be done. Coordination with the property owners about their driveway connections. They'll have to go from a driveway culvert to a driveway that comes off a curb and gutter section. So there's a lot more massaging needs to go on with this. But
are you doing the tweaking, or is Bill doing the tweaking?
It won't be me, but we'll be reviewing it. But yes, sir, we work together and guide and work with the design team to get the best best improvements out there. So,
And Mike,
so
you were saying we, is that we the county or we as in them?
we the county will be reviewing it. The developers will be teaming up to make these improvements with their design engineers. The Huddleston Steel is doing both sites, the one on the north side, one on the south side, and we're working with them to come up with the best plan. So if you know Sulphur Springs at all, it's quite a challenging curve, vertical and horizontal curve. This additional continuous third lane will help facilitate turning movements into the stores and until we can get this road flattened out, that intersection. But we think that's the best until we can straighten that section out.
Okay, and this is final plat approval, so that makes
This
me a
is
little
site plan approval.
Okay.
So standalone, the Sulphur Springs market was in good shape. It just, the time expired. But when the Primetime C store came on the scene and they haven't done all the work, they'll need to work together to, coordinate and get these improvements done.
They've agreed to do that.
Sir?
The developers have agreed to do that.
I would have to rely on the design team to speak to that.
Why would we approve something that we don't know that they're going to go along with, and you say it needs to happen?
That's why I said it needs some tweaking and working. So yes, it needs some more work. All in all, it's a decent plan, but we would also, and you'll see on the Primetime C store, for the Timberlake Drive, we'd like to see a left turn lane for those existing houses on Timberlake to be able to use a left turn lane instead of a painted island. But this is actually most likely in a TDOT right away, even though there's a line right there. We believe this is the controlled access area for the interchange, and that will also need to be worked out, with the highway department and also TDOT to make sure it meets their design criteria. So it does need a little more coordination, a little more design work, but that's where we're at now.
Let me just ask this question, Mike.
Yes, sir.
If we approve this and they said we're not going to tweak it, where does that leave us?
Then I don't give them a pre-construction meeting, and they don't.
Yeah, if the approval is made at that point with the understanding, yes, this is what we expect to see. I mean, even standalone without the other one, there were still some tweaks that needed to be made to the turn lane. But with this and then the other development, if they can't coordinate, I mean, like Mike said, we just don't grant them any building permits until they can work it out. And if they want to come back to you to try to fight that, I think that'd be the next.
So approval with staff comments would cover those?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I said, it needs some work, but we like this better than, two left turn lanes with tapers button up to each other, So the design team could speak to this, and maybe a representative from the one of the projects could speak to this as well. I don't know if anybody's here.
Huddleston Steel, anyone here would care to take a stab at that? Come up.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Allen. I have a question while he's coming up.
Sure, Rhonda. Go ahead.
My question really, I guess, is for Mike and for Doug, and that is, you've talked a lot about the fact that we need to have sort of a joint coordination on the design. Is there also, is it important that the timing or the implementation be coordinated as well?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay, so that's probably my greatest concern, is, if they're not operating, if they're not developing in sync, then that's going to be very problematic. So I don't know if we get some sort of a binding letter of commitment from each applicant, but we need something tying them to this design and a timeline. So that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. So if we can address that as we go through and talk to the applicants, that'd be great.
Yes, and we'll state your name.
My name is William Duke. I'm here on behalf of Huddleston Steel. What I'd like to say is that both developers are aware that they have to have these turn lanes put in whenever they go to build these stores. So whenever we got with the staff, engineering staff, they recommended that we combine each roadway. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to come up with a plan that we can have both connect. As Mike Hughes was saying, both developers at this time, like I said, they know that they are required to put in these turn lanes, but they have not been made aware at this time that they will be coordinating together. So, does anybody have any questions?
Just a question to follow up that question. If we approve this tonight, they will not be able to build until that coordination takes place. You're aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
So not only me withholding the pre-construction meeting for the sites, Tanya can withhold the building permits until these things are worked out. But, I mean, there's still a lot of work that needs to go in this, so.
Would it not be smarter just to defer this and let them work through the TDOT part of that too? Because it sounds like it's going to tie in the controlled access fence. So for me, I'd rather go ahead and make a motion to defer this and let them work a lot of these details out.
A question, Mike. Does the roadway width? Oh, scratch that. Will they have to acquire additional right-of-way to widen this road to gain the width needed to put the left turn lane in?
I'm not 100% sure, but I believe that's why they went from a roadside ditch with shoulders section to a curb and gutter, so it saves a little room.
They'll just close the ditches up.
The drawing that they're showing, it looks like it's barely fitting in the middle section of the right-of-way. So that's something else that would have to be coordinated.
It'll be close.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So that being said, too, is there a way to construct this a half at a time so you can keep emergency vehicles and
yes, sir.
Homeowners?
Yes, sir. Right.
So
yes, sir. They would work on a side at a time. They would build a side at a, they would shift traffic to one side.
All right.
And then, work on the other side.
So for the neighborhood, it's not a closed road. They wouldn't have to find a detour alternate.
Right. And that's part of the details, the traffic control plan, everything that goes along with that.
All right. So can we also then lock them into that the roadway has to be completed first before we grant the building permits for the two buildings?
Have that constructed first?
Why not?
Sure. That's something. Yes, sir.
I mean, that's putting your money where your mouth is, right?
Sir.
Okay.
That's sort of what the holdup is we're talking about right now, because we deferred.
Yes, sir. There was a motion to defer, I believe.
Well, but I'm talking about
when they come back.
I think Lee's talking about deferring until they get the joint agreement and they decide, yeah, we're going to do this. What I'm saying is that plus build the road, complete the road widening, then we'll grant you the building permits to do your two buildings.
Another option along that line may be, some of this work could probably be done simultaneously, but don't give them an occupancy certificate until the work is completed. That would allow them to actually move forward with construction, not have to spend the time constructing that particular section of roadway and then start building. They could kind of do it to have overlap too. That's an option as well.
What none of us want to see, and we have all been around long enough to see this happen, is you get your two stores built and then all of a sudden you run out of money.
Right.
And you don't have the money to finish the roads like you promised you would do. Mm-hmm. So I would rather see the majority of the road up front If they're going to run out of money, let them run out of money at the stores.
Understand.
And the main reason for the recommendation to defer on this is we know this is a trouble area, so I think the coordination is especially crucial in this area, and being confined against an interchange and an intersection that's a little bit difficult at best, so we just want to get it right.
Yes, and with a full engineering design, you'll know the costs, and we can, coordinate. Yes.
Lee, was that did you make a motion to defer?
He did.
Did you make a motion to defer?
And I seconded it.
Motion to defer and a second.
Yeah.
Now further comments. Go ahead.
I just want to say that Mike is in the infrastructure business. I'm in the infrastructure business. Lee's in the infrastructure business. This roadway widening is not a cheap fix.
No.
So that's why I want to get everything lined up to where we know the thing's going to get done up front before we turn them loose on the buildings.
They are moving in the right direction, but there's still more direction to tread,
I'm old. I don't trust anybody.
We have a motion and a second to defer. Other comments or questions? Once again, a motion and a second to defer item 18-3012, Sulphur Springs Market. Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6BB, 18-3021, River of Life Church, construction of 17,400 square feet community assembly along with 8,000 square feet gymnasium it's zoned LI located off Safari Drive. River of Life Church is the applicant. This includes a temporary meeting tent. Doug?
Yes, sir. A special exception approval was granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals back in July of 2018. The Planning Commission has seen this before. The site plan was approved back in October of 2018. Site plan approvals are valid for 18 months, as we discussed in the last application, unless a building permit has been obtained. Since no permits were ever obtained, the site plan has expired. The applicant's plans as far as the church building and everything goes is not changed. The site itself is the same as it was back when we looked at this originally back in October 2018. They have, however, included plans for a temporary meeting tent while the new building is being constructed. We have been working with the applicant and our building codes director and our fire chief on this issue. I know that and I'm going to let Tanya kind of go into this just a little bit more regarding the temporary tent and the material on the base of the tent as well. So with that, I think the comments that we have are pretty straightforward. I do believe Mike said some tweaking was needed on the drainage.
Just some minor stuff for erosion control for the new stuff that they're proposing.
Right. But I think the biggest issue really has to do with that temporary tent. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tanya to discuss that in a little more detail.
So they are making application they have not begun, if I'm not mistaken, they have not begun site clearing for this project. So beyond the site clearing, they have yet to build a structure. In the meantime, they have been lost their place that they typically worship. So they're proposing to place a 50 by 84 temporary structure to hold services in for likely a year at best. They say a year. My prediction is probably more like a year and a half by the time they get through this project. The code does allow us to issue a permit for a temporary structure for 180 days. It does give me the discretion as the building official to extend that for another 180 days, providing that the structure is on a permanent foundation. The structure will have to meet all of the, I made some notes too, all of the life safety requirements, fire requirements, means of egress, light, ventilation, ADA accessibility, and sanitation. So we will ensure that that is all done. The tent that they've proposed it's got a metal frame, a steel frame, so it's not the type of tent that you're imagining where it's got guy wires and stuff like that. It does have a metal frame. And there's still some kinks that we're going to have to work out and figure out seating and how they're going to get people in and out of their exit doors, lighting, that kind of stuff. So, and I'll be glad to answer any code questions. I'm sure I haven't answered all your questions with that, so.
Mr. Chairman, this is Commissioner Allen. I have a question.
Yes, Rhonda.
Thank you. Okay, Tanya, so you only have the option then to give them that renewal for a second 180 days if there is a permanent structure. Is that correct? I'm sorry, not just a structure, but a permanent foundation?
That is correct. If it's sitting and anchored to a slab, I do have the discretion of granting another 180-day extension.
Okay, so where does that code live? So I'm trying to figure out, is there any deviation from that? Is that state level? Where does that code live?
Any deviation to that would have to go to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals. It doesn't say that extension is limited to one. It could be more than one. It is in by the way, it's in Chapter 31 of the IBC.
This is the only reason that I ask, and it's because it's the same thing that you're thinking, which is given, the construction market now, how hard it is going to be to find, a contractor, and just moving forward at any pace, especially with, a major building, it's going to take some time. And so I guess I'm just trying to think down the road for them, what are their options? If they end up having to be in this location longer than 6 months, then we know what next. So that's all I'm trying to do is think through, begin with the end in mind. Where are we going to end up? How are we starting on this? And what flexibility do we have? Because I know, I was really fortunate. My church, we met inside a school, and, we were not going to be able to continue to meet there. And, it was really literally by the grace of God that we had acquired a building, in January and hadn't planned on occupying it for several months, but it worked out that we were able to have somewhere to meet. So I look at this situation and think, there, but for the grace of God go I. They're without a facility, they're without a location, their church wants to meet. I'm just trying to figure out where, inside of the regulations, can we help them land so that they can continue to meet.
Okay, so I did think about that, and I think that what we could do is keep an eye on their progress. I don't think that I would have an issue extending it again beyond the 1 year, beyond the 180 days, providing that progress was being made on the building. If we could see an end in sight, I don't have a problem. And providing that all of the approvals and et cetera, that all the issues that they've been proposed and approved are still being met at that time, I don't see an issue with extending it one more time. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you.
Go ahead, Lee.
So also the elements of water, sewer, electric on a temporary basis, the temporary parking, those things can be accommodated. I mean, they can establish that enough to function.
We think so. We think that we would allow them to use portable restroom trailers and have them parked there permanently, while they're using it permanently. ADA parking would have to be on a smooth surface. The rest of it, I'm assuming Doug and them would review, and they would allow it to use gravel on the regular parking or grass. Heating, ventilation, and stuff, they would be required to install units to heat and cool this, to condition this tent. They would be required to have a generator or something to use for emergency lighting and any power, really.
Yeah, much like the roadway construction, it's a significant investment for a semi-permanent
Correct.
situation. So just want to make sure that they're aware of all those elements.
Tanya, walk me through this concern. Have they revealed any financials with you? Have they gone to the bank and have a loan for the full construction value of the entire worship?
So we did discuss a little bit on their financials, and that is actually why they're in the situation that they're in today. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that the issue they've waited on, they might be able to shed some light on this, because I believe they're here. The reason they are here and being and not having a place to stay is because they came into some issues with their financials. But I understand that they've got it all straightened out and they're ready to go. Have I seen numbers? No, I have not. I have not seen any confirmation of anything.
Well, I guess my overall concern is, are they trying to build this a piecemeal? You know, you get a quarter's, a half a year's worth of donations, and so you put that to phase one, which may be get the building pad. And then it could be another 6 months until you build up enough donations where you get your framing package. And then 5 years later, you might be able to put the steeple on top of the church.
Right. That is certainly a concern.
Yeah, that's my concern.
For sure.
And without knowing the financials and having what their real plan is, when your 180 days times 2 runs out, I mean, I don't want to chase a bunch of people away.
Correct.
And say your structure has, the life of your structure has run its course, we're going to have to do something different. I just don't want to be that guy that has to say that.
Yes, and in the couple of conversations that we've had, the couple of meetings, that's been very, very clear. That's been made very clear to them that if progress hasn't been made, we need to see some progress being made in these 6-month periods.
Okay, let me ask you this last question. Let's say they do have some funding, at least enough to get a building pad down. Could you anchor into the building slab and reconstruct their metal tent on the building slab if there is a wait before the framing package comes? And then that counts as your extension because it's anchored to a concrete pad, and then when they're ready to go on, they get rid of the tent, they take their Sawzall and cut the anchors off the slab, and they're good to go. Is that a possibility?
Are you talking about in their church location, the location that they want to put their sanctuary?
Yeah, I'm talking about they've now got enough money and they've got a building slab out there, but it could be another 6 months before the framing package comes. But yet their time has expired on not having a foundation. So you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Could they move the tent actually on the building slab and anchor it to the building slab, and that counts for your anchoring? And then when they get the money to move on to the next phase, I don't know. Well, you'd still have to move the tent again, I guess.
I see someone back here in the corner that has some building plans and stuff, and I believe he's probably from the church, so let's hear straight from the horse's mouth. Did I read your gesturing right? Yes, sir. Very good. Would you come up and tell us who you are and face the audience, if you would, please?
Kevin Gunther with Reagan Smith. Here to represent the River of Life application this evening, and thank you for the opportunity, commissioners and county staff, to be with you tonight. I can speak in some very general terms relative to this project. As far as the financing goes, one of the big challenges of the project was there was an existing church that had to sell, and the property that had to sell on Sam Ridley. There was a large amount of that property that was connected with some city road work that the city of Smyrna was doing. And so because of that complexity, the sale of the property didn't happen as quickly as the River of Life had hoped. They had continued with their plans for the new building. And now that that has happened, I think the financial picture is very different, and they want to proceed as quickly as they can. As was mentioned, there is a challenge in this world with getting contractors in a quick manner and getting construction done in a quick manner. But I assure you, their plans are to take the funding that they've had to see this vision through. And it's really been a matter of timing, I think, more than a matter of trying to, take on a project that wasn't true to the financial wherewithal and vision that they have. I'm speaking in very general terms here. I don't know their bank account, and I don't know their balance sheet, if you will, but I do know that the sale of their existing property was a big part of what needed to happen to get the financial picture in order, and that has happened now. So they don't have a home in their old building, in their old property. Their hope is to get this, at least the 6-month permit in place, in order for them to, continue to meet with the understanding that they're going to look at, trying to get the building done as quickly as they can. If they need to continue to work with what it would take to extend that, they understand that's going to take a little more focus and more work. What they really want to do is at least get this 6-month permit in place so that they have a place to meet in the near future. They may continue to look for other places to meet. I know that's also been a challenge. I appreciated Rhonda Allen's observations on the challenge of finding space today, but this does give them at least a 6-month window to continue to look for the opportunities to either do what they need to do to make you comfortable that they'll extend the permit beyond the 6 months, or find a place that's maybe going to meet the interim as far as other space they can lease or rent. So those are just the generalities that I wanted to make sure to communicate. I can answer any more specific questions to the best of my ability if you have them.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Yes, Rhonda.
Kevin, do you know, and maybe this is for Tanya as well, are they planning on doing the foundation like she's described in order to put this tent up? Or I know she said that she could only give that second 180 days if there was a concrete foundation, which in my mind implies there's an option to give the 6 months without putting that down. So do you know what their plan is?
The only thing I can say for sure is that they're going to put a plywood flooring in for the temporary 6 months, and obviously they hope that they don't have to invest in something like a concrete foundation for a temporary effort. So I think
it is really their intention to only do it for 6 months, period.
I think that is the hope, and but I will say that they're going to have to continue to look at all the options, working with you or possibly finding another space within that 6 months. I couldn't tell you for sure where they'll land. I know that they do want, obviously they want to keep as much of their investment into the new building as they can and as little as they have to into the temporary structure. But I don't know beyond the initial plywood flooring, that they've made any kind of commitment to concrete or not past that.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Question: what happens to the temporary building when the new building is done? Is it salvageable, or the money they're putting in, if they meet their year, is it just ever how many thousand it cost? Is that just a lost money at the end of the project?
Well, at this point, they would definitely have to remove the tent, as the permit suggests. They may decide at some point that they want to try to salvage that, and perhaps they would want to put some concrete flooring down or something to make it more permanent. But I think, the initial thought is it's basically, it's not going to be something that remains on the property. It would be removed.
Second sub-question, and kind of where I was leading, is it possible that the temporary could be modified and made to a permanent at some point?
Well, it's not, the vision for where the permanent building is and how the whole site lays out and how it works doesn't allow the temporary tent to match up where the permanent building is. So that would be a pretty dramatic change, and I think they're going forward with the full idea that their building, as they had always planned it, would be, the permanent structure in a different location than the tent.
But let me kind of throw this out there, if I could. I think the commission is probably ready to go with an approval, but we keep getting hung up on this tent thing. I understand that the tent's going to be built or put up in a field, grass. What's the problem in putting it up in an area where there's going to be parking at some point in time? You go ahead and put gravel down or do some asphalt or something like that. Why don't you put it up there?
Well, I think the way the site is designed now with the permanent building and the temporary tent, the whole idea was to allow the construction to go full phase without any interference, with the tent, so that the tent could truly be someplace where it's not interfering with the construction process, and you wouldn't have that conflict going on, between the construction and what's temporary and what's permanent. So the idea has been to truly separate those locations.
Thank you. Any other questions of the applicant? Stay close in case there is, okay?
Yes, sir.
So the approval of this project will be twofold, an A and a B, approval of the project itself, the site plan, and then also to include what temporary work or time frame they're looking for.
Right, the way it's written, the approval would include that temporary structure.
Okay. It sounds like the 180 days would be sufficient time for them to sort out what they're going to do. Or go ahead.
It's my thought that, it's my impression that they gave me that they've invested, so they purchased this tent, by the way. It's my impression that they put so much funding or so much money into this tent that this is their intention to stay in until their building's complete.
So they've committed down this road then?
Yes,
okay.
So they anticipate a year. I anticipate that it'll probably be closer to a year and a half, 15 to 18 months.
And I guess my question is, if we approve the 180 now, can you administratively approve the additional 180, or does it have to come back to us again?
So the code permits me to grant another 180 180-day extension.
Okay.
If you wanted to restrict that, that's entirely up to you. If you wanted to put some regulation or some guidelines on that, that's up to you guys.
I think progress and sooner than later, the 180 feels perfectly comfortable, but if we need to do the full amount, I mean, we can explore that. But if you can do that administratively without coming back through us again, that gives us another option.
It's certainly not our intention to prevent them from having services. They don't have anywhere else to go, so that's not our intention. However, this is a large tent with a lot of people every Sunday for a year, possibly a year and a half. And certainly we're going to want to keep an eye on making sure that they're complying with everything that the code requires, the life safety and the sanitation and the lighting and the conditioning and getting people in and out of there in the event of an emergency and that kind of stuff. And I would want to know that the building that we've got a light at the end of the tunnel, that there is progress, significant progress being made on the building before I would approve another 180 days.
And with your thought on that, you're already thinking past a 1 year. How does it work then? Because that's another extension.
It is.
So does that come back to us at that point, or does that, again, at your discretion?
Again, that's entirely up to you. They're saying a year. They're saying they're going to need 180 days. I'm thinking that they're going to come back in a year and go, you know what, we're still 3 or 4 months from being done.
And that is
that's
possible
my thought.
to do that.
And that's possible. And if I see that they're almost complete or that they are just a couple of months from being done, I'm okay with that. And I don't mind to approve it if it's okay with you guys.
We approve this tonight. 180 days start tonight.
It starts the day they get their temporary permit.
Yeah.
They would go to Doug and get a zoning compliance form, and then they would come down to me, and we would issue a temporary parking permit or a temporary permit for the tent to be erected.
Go ahead, Mike.
Codes question and a legal question. Does the county, if we approve this, and this is a temporary structure, but the temporary really has some long life to it, potential long life to it, if the remnants winds of a hurricane, if anything comes through town, tears this thing up, hurts people, does the county have any liability?
That's probably a legal question. I will say, before Nick answers that we will verify that this tent meets the minimum. It does have to meet some minimum structural design requirements as far as the code, and we will verify that with the manufacturer specifications. And then I'll let Nick.
I think this, the same sort of analysis of when we approve houses and Ms. Bell goes in and her inspectors go in to ensure that they're compliant with code. That's what our governmental entity is going to be charged with doing. A house could fall down in a tornado, and I suppose somebody could sue the county. I say this routinely. You can sue anybody for anything these days, right? But I think the analysis would be the same as Ms. Bell just specified, that she would go out there and ensure that the temporary structure is compliant with code, and that is a reasonable compliance with duty that I think.
But I guess my kickback would be, this is a unanchored to the ground tent.
If Ms. Bell thinks that the code, Ms. Bell, is there a code provision under the IBC that, or what would it be that you would be examining whether it meets the minimum requirements?
Right. The tent has some specifications to anchor it to a foundation or to the ground, whichever way they do it.
And so
the manufacturer specifies how it's anchored.
Sure.
And we follow their manufacturer specifications.
We need to get to a decision-making mode. Let me just say, my concern is not for this. I have no concern over the River of Life Church. But if we approve this, and then 2 years down the road, something else that we may be less favorable to approve, we have set some type of a standard that we need to probably follow as we go forward in the future. I would add the concern that the commission would have as it related to the 180-day process, that if we saw little to no progress at the end of that 180 days, that it be pulled. We have to show progress, and then at the end of the second 180 days, if they're still showing a lot of progress and they're real close, all is well. But if they're not, if they stop, then things need to be pulled. And that's the way that you're looking at it as well.
Right, and the issue, the gentleman here from Reagan Smith had said, when we sat down with the folks from River of Life Church, I told them that in order for them to have the tent there for anything greater than or longer than 180 days, it would have to be on a permanent foundation. I have not heard from them whether they're going to do the permanent foundation or not. Putting it out there on grass for a year and a half is going to be, I mean, I don't know what's going to look like in 6 months. So the code does require, that's the only way that it allows me the discretion of a 180-day extension is if the tent's on a permanent foundation. Otherwise, it limits it at 180 days. Was that clear?
Yes, with the plan being initially the plywood or the wood structure floor that they're planning to put in, I would feel comfortable making a recommendation to approve subject to staff comments with 180 days initially to be reevaluated for an extension at staff level approval if that's appropriate for an additional 180.
With or without the permanent foundation?
180-day approval without the permanent foundation. Anything past that would require the permanent foundation per codes, per regulation. Did I say that right?
Yeah, if I may just interject, we want to make sure not to alter anything that's currently in the local codes. So I think your motion should be in line with what Ms. Bell described already.
Yes. if I've understood that correctly, I'm comfortable making a motion to approve with 180-day approval in the way it was stated by the representative of the church.
And that's just for the temporary structure. The full site plan is still good for the 18.
Yes.
That's
yes.
we're kind of talking about two separate things.
Yes, that's what I'm trying to keep sorted out there. Yes. Did I cover all of it?
Well, the only hurdle with that is if we approve it on a temporary foundation, or no foundation, really, just a plywood floor, and then we turn around and let them, extend it for another 180 days, then they would have to, is that what you're saying? Then they would have to pour a permanent foundation?
If they've made the decision in the 180 days to establish that foundation to get an extension,
Gotcha. Got it.
In order to grab the second 180 days, they have to meet the code of that permanent foundation within this 180-day period.
Right, that would take significant, they would have to tear it down and pour the foundation and erect it
again. So they need to evaluate where they want to be in this 180 days and make that determination of their path. And so that's going to be decision-making in that 180 days or before they come get that permit.
Okay.
Maybe they'll have that determined before they come get the permit and start the clock.
Okay.
Is that complicated enough?
I'll second the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Rhonda. We have a motion and a second to approve, including the temporary meeting tent, and that would be reevaluated after 180 days by staff.
Correct.
That 180 days would be up to staff as to what the progress is and what needs to happen at that point.
And if they've met all the code requirements associated with that extension of another 180.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for staff. We spent an awful lot of time talking about the tent, but we haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about the permanent structure. Are there any issues there? I see that we are very close to a floodway, and this site is in the floodplain, and I'm sure there are other issues with topography, sinkhole. Tell me what your evaluations have been on this.
That was all worked out on the first go-round. It's in excellent shape. All they're asking for is an extension or a reapproval with this temporary tent. So everything else is in fantastic shape.
Other questions or comments? Once again, we have a motion and a second to approve item 18-3021, River of Life Church. This is a construction of a community assembly plus a temporary meeting tent. Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Yes. Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Bettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6BC 20-3034, Primetime C-Store, construction of 3,789 square feet convenience store on 3,264 square foot fueling canopy area on 3.65 acres. Boy, that's a lot of numbers. Zone CS located off Sulphur Springs Road. Chad
Chodhari.
There you go. That's what I said, is the applicant.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant is proposing to construct a gas station convenience market on this property. We referred to this a little earlier on the agenda, as you recall. The market will primarily focus on private passenger vehicles. However, on the site plan, you will notice that there are a couple of spots there for a couple of tractor-trailer parking spots should one want to spend the night on the location or park there temporarily while they're getting some food or something from inside. One of the concerns staff had really relates to those spots and how the trucks are going to access those spots and leave the site. We've talked with the applicant about that. We have concerns that their main entrance and exit is going to be on the southern end of the site. However, it's going to be real tempting for someone to pull out of one of those two spots and try to go out the entrance right there where Mike is demonstrating. We also had some concerns about the turn lane, which we talked about in the last application. Mike may have some additional comments he wants to make on that. I know there's some additional drainage concerns that Mike has on this as well. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions, but I'll turn it over to Mike to let him kind of go through the concerns that he's got.
So like Doug was saying, this is tied to the turn lane Sulphur Springs Road improvements. I could read through the shortcomings or whatever y'all want to do.
I think it's only fair to do the same till they work it out together, and I'll make a motion to defer and subject to all the staff comments that go along with that, to work through that process.
We have a motion and a second to defer 20-3034 Primetime C-Store. Questions or comments? And this was tied, I think, directly into item 6CA. Correct.
Mr. Chairman, I have a comment.
Yes, Rhonda.
Thank you. Since we didn't get off into the details on this particular site plan, you might want to make sure, Mike and Doug, that the applicant is aware that there are other issues with this site plan beyond strictly the traffic. So I don't want them to think that they're going to take this deferral period and only address the traffic issue and not any of the other deficiencies that I believe exist. So that's only my word of caution, and I would just say make sure that they are aware that there may be potentially other issues that they need to be taking this time to work on as well.
Thank you, Rhonda. That's covered under your comments, correct?
Yes, sir.
So noted. You okay with that, Rhonda?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we did go over the comments before the meeting with one of the design team engineers, so they are aware of that. And they will be required to resubmit plans for review again. So it will go through the review cycle again.
Very good. So you could kill two birds in one stone when they bring it back. Very good. Other questions or comments? Once again, we have a motion to defer final plat item 20-3034 Primetime C-Store. Questions? Comments? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch.
Yes.
David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Everwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. We're down to our rezoning request, item 6D. Let me go ahead and make an announcement that all of these rezoning requests will be considered tonight by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission is just a recommending body. The full Rutherford County Commission has the authority to rezone or deny, and all of these rezoning requests that will be heard tonight are scheduled to be heard before the full Rutherford County Commission at 6:30 p.m. on December 17th. That's a Thursday evening, December 17th. Item 6D, rezoning requests, 6DA, REZ 20-026, James and Tammy Smith. The location is 926 J.D. Todd Road. Commission district is 3. The county commissioner is Michael Rather. Size of the site is approximately 5 acres. Tax map is 21. Existing zoning is RM, residential medium density. The proposed zoning is AR for agricultural residential. Doug.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This zoning case comes as a result of zoning enforcement action. The applicants recently began operating a dog boarding grooming business on the property. The business came to the attention of our zoning enforcement office, who confirmed with our staff, planning staff, that no approval had been granted. You'll see with your agenda packets, there's an attached summary there from the zoning enforcement. After discussing the situation with the applicants who are present tonight, various options were discussed to obtain compliance. Kennels are not allowed as either minor or major home-based businesses, and they're also not allowed in the RM district. They are, however, allowed in the agricultural residential district by special exception. So the applicants made this application to try to come into compliance. So they understand if the property is rezoned, and this is actually a down zone, they're actually going from RM, which would allow them more density, to a lesser dense zone, but they would also have to apply to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the special exception. So the rezoning of the property as what they're asking for tonight and what the county commission would consider next month. Even if that's approved, that doesn't approve the business automatically. They still have another step to go through. The only employees of the business would be ones that live on the property. The business is within an existing 1,500 square foot building along the east property line, which the applicant has stated is insulated. They don't have office hours per se, but they did indicate they never start before 7 a.m. and typically don't go beyond 8 p.m. The applicant also indicated they can groom a maximum of 4 dogs per day, although that's the exception and not the norm, and they don't have any plans for expansion. The property will continue to have access to J.D. Todd Road. Any new access drives, et cetera, would have to be approved by the county highway department. The property would still be zoned for residential purposes, and there's no improvements contemplated beyond what's already on the property. The BZA also has the ability to place reasonable restrictions on special exception applications, which could include screening or buffering requirements, or also the performance standards that are typically required for commercial type development. Again, this would be a residential zone, so they don't necessarily apply in that zone. The purpose of the application is an attempt to bring this into compliance. We do feel that the rezoning of the property in and of itself to AR is consistent with our recommendations that are in the comprehensive plan. But again, just because the rezoning is approved, they still would have to go through the Board of Zoning Appeal process, and the applicant is aware of that. But with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I don't recall getting any phone calls about this particular application. Quite frankly, I'm trying to think back if I did. Memory's not coming up with any. So with that, I'll be, again, happy to answer any questions.
Doug, do you know how many animals they have at one time?
Off the top of my head, no, but the applicants are present and can answer that.
Any questions for staff? The applicant here, would you please come forward? If you would, please state your name for the record and then give us a brief summary of what you're doing and what you plan on doing.
Okay, I'm Jimmy Smith, or James Smith, and this is my wife, Tammy, who she does we will be doing the dog boarding and grooming. She will be doing the grooming. And we only have 12 units in the facility. And so, which, a lot of families may have 2 dogs. So, we have capability of 24 dogs at one time, if that be the case. So, that being said, any other questions or?
Any questions for Mr. Smith?
It's a pretty simple operation. It's mom and pop, so.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing open for REZ 20-026, James and Tammy Smith. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Seeing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners?
Doug, this looks like a fairly rural area, so let me ask, and since they were in violation without the proper permitting, are we positive that neighbors on either side were mailed out notifications that
yes, sir,
this was done? Okay.
It was, yes, sir.
Make a motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second to approve REZ 20-026, James and Tammy Smith rezoning request from RM to AR. Other questions or comments? Craig.
Thank you.
Call the roll, please.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Item 6DB, REZ 20-027, Mikhail Isick. The location is 3604 Woodbury Pike. Commission district is 4. The county commissioner is Robert P. The size of the site is approximately 2.5 acres. Tax map is 103. The existing zoning is RM, residential medium density. The proposed zoning is CS for commercial services. Doug.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The applicant would like to develop the property for a food market with a kitchen. The applicant has provided a preliminary floor plan, but has not provided a concept plan. We did ask the applicant to provide one, but we did not receive one, so there's not one within your agenda materials today. They are not binding, but as you know, but staff's concern, as was what we relayed to the applicant when they made their application, was whether there was adequate room and septic soil on the property to develop the property the way they wanted to do it. The applicant's plan will include a building, parking area, buffer, stormwater detention, et cetera, while developing around any existing soils that they have on the property. So it's difficult to determine whether all these elements can fit unless we have a more detailed examination of the property. The property will continue to have access to Woodbury Pike. Any new access drives, improvements, et cetera, would have to be approved by the Rutherford County Highway Department, and any site improvements, again, parking, access aisles, et cetera, would have to be built to county standards. CS zoned properties are required to install a type 2 buffer adjacent to other residentially zoned properties. You would have to see a buffer on this on the eastern, southern, and a portion of the western property. There is a portion, as you look on the map, that is actually adjacent to other commercially zoned property. They wouldn't necessarily have to buffer along that. A landscape buffer would be required, again, on those other sides, and a plan would have to be submitted with their site plan demonstrating compliance with that, and performance standards would apply, as this would be a commercial zone. There is other similarly zoned property immediately adjacent to the subject property, as well as some across Woodbury Pike. Our concern really isn't so much with the zoning request as it is whether or not there's adequate room for all the required improvements on the property. So staff was neutral on it because of that, but the applicants are present and might be able to answer some more questions. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any that you may have of me.
The concerns you have as it relates to being enough room on the property would have to come back before us for site plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, even if they did have a concept plan, I just want to make sure everybody understands that, again, it's not a binding plan since it's not a plan development. But my recommendation to the applicant at least was, before going forward with all this, it might be a good idea to know whether or not everything you want to do can be accommodated on the property.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Doug. Other questions for staff? Is the applicant here? Would you please come forward? If you would state your name and what your intentions are.
Yes, sir. My name is Daniel Ishak, and this is my dad, Michael Ishak, and my mom, Jahir, and I'm presenting both of them. My plan is we will be doing a food market, and it will have a kitchen, and include all the food markets. It's going to be selling to all food markets and be average in that store, plus the kitchen. And all assets is going to be from Woodbury Pike. That's it. Any question?
Questions for the applicant while he's here? Very good, thank you.
Welcome, sir.
Chairman Phillips. Just a quick look at the USDA soils layer, which is not official, but it is a good indication. A lot of the property is loam soil, which is really good septic system soil. So, they may have what they need out there, but we don't have, like Doug said, a defined soil survey of the property. I will say that we did have to deal with a drainage complaint on Woodcraft. This property right to the south, if you look at the contours, it does have a lot of flow that comes right through here. I believe the highway department has addressed the drainage issues, but as part of our site plan review, that's something else we would pay attention to.
Very good. Thank you, Mike. Other comments or questions for staff at this time?
I will say, this, if in the event there is any more questions regardless, but we did receive some phone calls on this, both for and against the application, so for everybody to be aware.
This time I'll declare the public hearing open for REZ 20-027 for Mr. Asick. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. Commissioner P.
My name is Robert P., 4047 Bivens Hill Road. Of course, I'm the commissioner in this district. I also have received some calls, people concerned about this proposal. And a couple of things that bother me about it, the applicants were actually told a couple of things they needed to do, and they haven't supplied that to us. This soil recommendation to know what they can actually build there, to me, is very pertinent on whether they should even be able to do this or not. Two, it would save them a lot of money and time if they would bother to do that. But anyway, having said that, this is a rezoning request, and you've got the right to deny a zoning request if it doesn't meet the needs of the people in that area. And my suggestion would be to deny this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner P. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners?
I guess I'll just jump right in there then.
Thank you, Jim.
I'm not sure that the applicant understands the complexities of what's involved here, and I feel like everybody's thinking the same thing I am. Afraid that he's going to go out and purchase this property. He's going to get the CS zoning, which is, we use this term a lot, speculative zoning essentially, and then find out that he can't do the market that he wants to do because of the landscaping and the detention ponds and the septic soil sites and all of the other things. And the site is rather narrow in the front, so I'm just concerned that he's going to get into this project and he will have invested a lot of money in it and find out that it's not suitable, and then he's got a piece of commercial property that he can't do anything about, he can't do anything with, and who knows what else somebody else can do with it, and we don't really have any control over that. So I'm very, very reluctant to, unless somebody can come up with some better reasons, I'm very reluctant for this one to move forward until the applicant does his homework, at least until the applicant does his homework a little bit better and can show us that there is some thought and some research put into this.
And I would add, just so everybody's aware, of course, with rezonings to just what I call a conventional zone, I think in what I hear you saying, Jim, it doesn't really matter whatever the use would be, because we just don't know, is there going to be adequate infrastructure, soil, and everything available to do what he wants to do. I think they own the property based on the tax rolls. They actually already do own it. It's not something they're looking to purchase. So, that was, again, staff's concern from the get-go was, maybe you should do a little bit of work on the front end before you have a better idea. Yes, this will fit. All this will, how many parking spaces you're going to need, new structure and all this. Is there going to be enough, soil on the property? That was always our concern from the get-go. So, but yeah, we're not talking just the specific use here. You're talking really any use in general is kind of what you're referring to. At least that's what I hear you saying.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Pettis.
I do agree with Commissioner Abelwater that what we're looking at here is what we have seen before we've seen individuals that have come forward, but we don't have the information that we need to make the decision to go forward with this. We have a piece of property here that we don't know that much about, and I don't think the applicant understands exactly what he wants to, or what he will be dealing with when we get into this a little bit further and deeper into it. So I think until we receive that information and have to deal with that, and to know exactly where those soil sites are, where we know exactly what that building's going to look like to go there, and what we have to deal with, I think we're sort of looking at something that's just unknown to us and walking into it blind. And with that, the way I see it right there, that we just don't have the information to make that decision, I'm going to make the motion to deny.
We have a motion to deny. I need a second. And a second from Mike. The applicant has raised his hand, and I would open the floor back up to him. If you'd like to make a comment, please come forward.
Yes, sir. We just made a simple plan as we have been asked to. We did not do a full concept of what we're going to do, because we just wanted to get a permission to turn this land into commercial, that's all. So in the next meeting, I hope we will have a concept of full of what we're doing. So that's it. So I just did a simple plan as I asked to. So we did not do a full concept plan.
Right, and we're not looking for, I mean, just so we're clear, I know we talked about this before, but just so we're clear, we're not talking a full-blown site plan.
Okay.
You don't have to go through all that, but just get enough soil information to know with the building and the parking and the screening, everything's going to be required, that you have enough room to do what you want.
I think we did a soil determination to determine the soil.
Okay. So then I would just use that as part of the, to help get a concept plan worked up. It doesn't have to be a full-blown plan, though. You can give me a call. We can talk more about it in my office.
Yes, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, this motion to deny would not prevent him from coming back in a month or two or three with the plan?
No, because if he's not going to pursue it any further, then, the provision we have in the ordinance on the time limits for reapplying would not apply, because it didn't get a denial by the full commission. So.
Very good. Once again, we have a motion and a second to deny REZ 20-027. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch.
Yes.
David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Aberwater.
Yes.
Lee Bogle.
Yes.
Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Bettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes. The motion to deny is carried. Item 6DC, REZ 20-028, rezoning request for Eddie Queen for Hamilton and Moore. The location is on Burnt Knob Road. County Commission District is 9. The Commissioner is Joe Gurley. Size of the site is approximately 50 acres. Tax map is 72. Tax map 77, parcels 2105, 2303, and 2304. Existing zoning is RM residential medium density. Proposed zoning is LI for light industrial. Doug.
Yes, thank you, sir. According to information provided by the applicant, and the applicant is present, he would like to use the subject property as storage for their existing business across Burnt Knob Road. No new buildings are currently planned for the property. The applicant has provided a concept plan. It's been included with your agenda materials. The concept plan shows mulch storage areas as well as a tree and landscape plant growing area on the rear of the property. Existing vegetation along Burnt Knob Road is to remain undisturbed. There's an existing house that is to remain at 5818 Burnt Knob Road. The existing house at 5808 is proposed to be removed. The applicant would like to use the existing septic site on that property for their business across Burnt Knob Road. We did inform the applicant that they would need approval from the Rutherford County Highway Department to make that connection under the county right-of-way. He has talked to Greg Brooks about that, and Greg has talked back with Mike and myself about that, about what would have to happen for him. That's really kind of outside. That's really more for informational. That's really outside the need for any rezoning. They could do that regardless, but I just wanted so you were aware of that. There's no parking area shown, but they would need to submit a site plan showing the improved access drive and any site improvements such as parking, access drives, et cetera. They would have to be built to county standards, the current standards that we have. The applicant would also have to obtain Rutherford County Highway Department approval on any new or improved access drives. Light industrially zoned properties are required to install Type 3 buffer adjacent to other residentially zoned properties. Buffers would be required on the eastern, western, and northern property lines. Existing material can be used for that. Again, a landscape plan would have to be submitted with a site plan demonstrating their compliance, and the performance standards would also apply. The likelihood of single-family residential on these properties is low due to the proximity of the rock quarry, the topography, and the rocky soil. The property to the south where the applicant's business is located was zoned light industrial in 2018. We have required about some of the potential uses of the subject property. The applicant is present to discuss some of those. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Doug. Any questions for staff before we hear from the applicant? The applicant here, or the applicant's representative?
Chairman Phillips, Commissioners, my name is Clyde Rounder with Huddleston Steel Engineering. I'm representing Mr. Queen, who's in the audience, as well as Tom Reed, who's also an associate with Mr. Queen. As Doug mentioned, Doug, do you have that site plan on? Do we have it? So
it's
we can
on
project
their iPads. I mean, we can probably pull it up.
All right, put you up to that, but.
Sorry, Clyde, I didn't know you were.
You're fine. I'll just walk you through. When we initially submitted the application for the light industrial zoning, we didn't have a site plan associated with that, and staff was very concerned about at least kind of seeing the program we're projecting onto the property. Mr. Queen has a tree service across the street. He's rezoned that in the last few years. He is in the process of moving his operation out of Nashville into this area. So overall, on the site plan, we're about to get to it. As Doug mentioned, there are 2 existing homes on the property. One home's to remain, one home's to be taken down. The access for this, by combining all these sites, is basically in the middle of those 2 sites, and we'll traverse all the way up to the top of the property. So that main line you see is basically an access road all the way up to the far end of the property. The clearing area you see, let's just say left to right on the right-hand side, that would all be for nursery stock growing. But as Doug mentioned, buffers are going to be required. We'd like to keep the existing vegetation in place. So we'll clear out selectively, making sure that we provide adequate wood buffering with the existing material. And then if you see a little dashed line kind of in the middle, that is a septic field that is servicing one of the homes that will be tapped into for the development across the street. So there is a tight line that will be put under Burnt Knob Road and tie into that septic field. The circles you see are basically mulch storage. They're in the business of clearing land and acquiring a lot of mulch as a result. So as their building expands across the street and their business expands, they'll be coming over to this side for more storage. They're in the process of wanting to get a building built on the other side of Burnt Knob, and that was the original request of getting that rezoned to LI, like I said, about a year ago. So these are kind of companion projects. One of the nice things is there's a TVA easement or some sort of electrical easement that runs basically right into the site, maybe a few hundred yards in, but all that vegetation along Burnt Knob will stay intact. They have no ambition of developing anything close to Burnt Knob, so all the existing vegetation stays, the TVA, the easements behind that, and then all the development they're proposing is beyond that electrical easement. And there's no building proposed on this new site, so all the operations will really stay on the south side of Burnt Knob Road versus crossing to the north side. So that's the general overview of the site plan. Again, Mr. Queen is here if you have any specific questions about business operation, and Mr. Reed's here as well for some details. But I'm here to answer any questions I can do the best to answer.
Questions of the applicant?
Clyde, quick question. Did you say that the septic field area and this new tight line is going to service a property out over the boundary?
Yeah, when they spoke to Mr. Brooks, who's with the highway department, that was to get approval for boring underneath Burnt Knob Road to allow for a septic line to go from the existing property to what they're getting rezoned now.
Okay. What's the definition of a tight line?
It's just, it may not be, Mike, it may not be exactly a tight line. That's the word I use when you talk about going from a septic tank to actually the septic field. It's the line that connects the two. So from the building.
More or less a force main. So it'll be a line.
So it's not a perforated line?
No, sir.
Okay.
No, sir.
So
no.
We have no concern about traffic or not traffic, but construction equipment working these mulch piles to damage that line or the percolation, compacting the soil too much?
Oh, yes, it'll need to be protected, most definitely. And I assume we'll see a site plan on this. So it'll be like the mulch company on Miller Lane. You know, at first they were using that to store mulch on. And we said, you really shouldn't do that because you'll mess up your septic system. So in talking with Greg Brooks, it will be a line that is sleeved underneath Burnt Knob. Like Clyde said, it'll be bored underneath the road with a box on each side of the right-of-way, outside of the right-of-way. So Greg felt comfortable with that as being protected enough to not disrupt Burnt Knob.
Mr. Kush, were you talking about the line itself, the feeder line versus the septic field?
Yeah, it's. I think Mike just clarified. We're not worried the fact that overcompaction is going to damage the percolation. It's just a solid line that's going to be sleeved. Yeah, so that's not a problem.
So the property on the south side, I'd have to turn on the topography, but I believe it is at lower elevation, so they'll need a pump to get it up and over to the existing field lines on the north side. That looks to be the case.
Other questions of the applicant? Thank you, Clyde.
Thank you.
Ready for our public hearing? This time I'll declare the public hearing open for REZ 20-028 Eddie Queen for Hamilton and Moore. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, please come forward. If you would, state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Dr. E.C. Talbert, 84 years old, lived in this county all my life. I live at 7279 Vaughn Road for over 40 years. We don't like change, but it's necessary, and I understand that. I think my main concern is we have this change in the zoning from the residential to light industrial request. And that at the moment seems plausible. But my real concern is what happens to it 3 or 4 years down the road. This is basically a residential area, and I would like to see it stay residential. We have a rock crusher that's almost adjacent to this property. And if Mr. Queen decides in 3 or 4 years that he wants to sell the property to the rock crusher, then we have already zoned it L1. And Mr. Moses said that the rock crusher is already zoned L1. It's been grandfathered in. So they purposely would buy the property in 3 or 4 years maybe. I don't know what the intentions are. This may be totally foreign, but we have no guarantee that it won't happen. But if the rock crusher wants to buy the property, then the zoning has already been approved and he just moves in and starts grinding rock on that property. We have a church, North Boulevard Church of Christ, is in the process of building a new church a few thousand feet east of this development. And residential is all in that area and will continue to be in that area. And do we need to industrialize this area at this time? My feeling is that we do not. And I would ask you to certainly think of this soberly for both now and the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Doug, can you address that concern before, while he's having a seat?
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to. Light industrial does allow for quite a few different types of uses. However, mining and quarrying is not one of them. Light industrial does not allow for that. Heavy industrial allows for mining and quarrying and whatnot, and only by special exception. So, using the example that the gentleman used, if for some reason Mr. Queen wanted to sell the property to the rock quarry, the quarry would have to come back and go through this similar process. They would have to get the property rezoned. Assuming they got the property rezoned to heavy industrial, they would have to get a special exception from the Board of Zoning Appeal to do that. I will add that in the zoning ordinance there are quite a few requirements for quarries as far as setbacks go from adjacent property lines, especially residential property lines, that quite frankly the size of this probably couldn't meet. You probably couldn't quarry this site just because it's just not large enough. So I hope that answers the question.
The answer to your question is no, that could not happen as it related. They could sell it to the rock quarry, but the rock quarry could not mine that. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request? Being no one else, I'll declare this public hearing closed. Commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Doug.
Rhonda?
In your comments, your staff comments, you said that you had inquired into potential uses of the land, and that until that information was received, that staff would remain neutral on this project. Have you received the information that would move you from neutral to an opinion? And if so, what would that opinion be?
The comments that the applicant's representative, Mr. Roundtree, just made gave me a little more comfort. If I would have had a little more information on the front end before I did the comments, some of that information I think came after the staff report was close to being completed. So based on his description that he's given, I think I'm okay with that. I think what we were concerned about, we just didn't want to see this become a situation that we considered a few months ago down the road with a potential mini warehouse facility, but I don't think that's the case here.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Pettis.
Doug, I know we've got this as light industrial. Is it being placed as light industrial due to the business of the mulch storage? Is that what's doing that?
Pretty much. I mean, it's similar to the business he's running across the street, so it was more for consistency.
Well, I was just wondering because he's got trees and landscaping in this, and then he does have the mulch in there, and I didn't know if somewhere in the agricultural area or something like that it could possibly be placed. I just questioned, but I figured that's what that was all about.
Sir.
That's all I had.
Thank you, Pettis.
This is not open for retail, is it? This is...
No, sir.
Okay.
Clyde, is that the case? This is not retail, is my understanding.
Doug, it seems like we did a mulch storage facility one time before, maybe over close to Butler or Miller Road or something. And were there concerns about fires in that conversation?
Well, you have to turn the mulch over so often to do that, to make sure that isn't an issue. I'm sure the applicant's aware of that, what needs to be done in that situation. But yes, that is something that we want to make sure he keeps an eye on.
I think we've determined that this is probably not a feasible 50 acres for housing. Is that kind of a confirmation of that thought?
For the
this is not suitable really for home building.
Well, I wouldn't anticipate this. I mean, there are a couple of homes on the property, but when you start going further back, the topography starts getting in the way. The type of soil or lack thereof is an issue. So,
I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Subject to staff comments.
Subject to staff comments, certainly.
Thank you, Mike. We have a motion by Mike, a second by Jim, to approve item REZ 20-028, Eddie Queen for Hamilton and Moore. Any other questions or comments? Charlotte?
Doug, did you receive any phone calls or?
We did get a couple of phone calls about this, mostly just informational. Interesting, the speaker that was up here a little bit ago, I said something about the Church of Christ, North Boulevard Church of Christ, a little bit further down the road. They actually did call about this and were curious as to why they didn't get a notification. They did realize between the time they called and left me the voicemail when I called them back that the site was about a mile away and it wasn't immediately adjacent to any property they own, so they didn't have concerns at that point.
Other questions? Once again, the motion is to approve. Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Yes. Craig Lynch. Yes. David Jones.
Yes.
Jim Averwater. Yes. Lee Bogle. Yes. Marvin Whitworth.
Yes.
Mike Cush.
Yes.
Pettis Reed.
Yes.
Rhonda Allen.
Yes.
Jeff Phillips.
Yes. Motion to approve carries. Thank you. Item 6DD, REZ 20-029, Nasser Al-Zabit. The location is 4372 Shelbyville Pike. Commission district is 6. The county commissioner is Joe Frank Jernigan. Size of the site is approximately 5 acres. Tax map is 149. Existing zoning is OP for office professional. Proposed zoning is CG for commercial general. Doug.
Yes, sir. Thank you. The applicant would like to develop this property into an automobile sales and service station. Motor vehicle repair is allowed in the CS zone, but motor vehicle sales establishment must be zoned at least CG. Concept plan has been submitted by the applicant and has been included with your agenda packets. The existing office building would be remodeled into the main office, and the plans show proposed buildings for servicing of vehicles. Also shows areas for car sales and employee parking. Of course, if this is approved, they would have to submit an engineered plan for Planning Commission approval. The property would continue to have access to Shelbyville Pike. Any new access drives or improvements would have to be approved by TDOT. The closest median opening is at the intersection of Shelbyville Pike and Crescent Road, approximately 550 feet to the south of the existing entrance of this property. There was an approved site plan for property directly to the south of this site several years back that had planned to make some improvements to that opening. But that development never moved forward. Some of you probably remember that. It was a service station, basically gas station convenience market. So that plan has expired, and quite frankly, we haven't heard anything about that for quite a while, so I don't expect that to happen. Motor vehicle sales and service establishments, though, do not typically have the same traffic demand as a retail site, general retail, but all site improvements would have to be built to county standards. Excuse me. Commercially zoned properties, commercial general, required to install a Type 2 buffer adjacent to other residentially zoned properties. This site, should it be rezoned, would be surrounded by similar zoning, commercial services and commercial general, and wouldn't require any buffering. They would require interior landscaping, which would be demonstrated on a landscape plan submitted to our office, and the performance standards would still apply. The existing property is already zoned for non-residential purposes. Office professional was used as a doctor's office. The site's surrounded by two sides by CG zoning and to the south with CS zoning. The property is also located along Shelbyville Pike, which is classified as an urban-style corridor in our plan. We do feel the request is consistent with the recommendations of the plan, and we do recommend approval. The applicant's representative, Mr. Rob Mulchin, he is on the Zoom call. I can see him right there. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff at this time? Okay, the applicant is, I believe, via Zoom, right, Doug?
Right.
Okay, who's there?
Rob Moulton, SEC, on behalf of Mr. Elizabeth.
Hello. You're on.
All right, good. Appreciate the time tonight. My client is looking forward to potentially bringing his business to this property here on that side. As you see on your concept plan there, the existing house along the road is where he wants to intend to remodel that structure. And like Doug said, this has been used before as an office space on that side. So do some remodeling inside, some maintenance on the outside on that side as well. Then proposing two buildings that will be used for more or less fixing up cars. From this standpoint, there is going to be used car sales and new car sales on that side. So he's planning for the first building, the building one, the 5,000 square foot building, to be the initial building, and then the larger building at the back, the 15,000 square foot building, would be a phase two if necessary, if the business continues to grow as he's hoping it will on that side. So you'll more or less see the enhancements to the existing structure first, and then the phase one building, and then eventually, hopefully, at some point in time, the phase two. We're looking at about a 60-car lot on this side of things. He's not looking to be anything gigantic on that side. So he wanted just to kind of keep this small niche in regards to the market that he's used to selling his vehicles in on that side. As we talked about this being on Shelbyville, there is no left-hand turn on this. We will have to go down to Crescent Road for vehicles to make a U-turn to go back north of Shelbyville Pike back to Murfreesboro on that side. So we are limited in access because of this being a TDOT right away on that side, but we will provide a raised median in the middle of our entry in order to help facilitate the correct movements in and out of the site on that side. Stormwater management, we do have a sinkhole on the property that we're planning on using as our detention facility on that side. We'll be working through those things with the county engineering department on that as we go through the site plan process if this project is approved. I'm happy to answer any questions now or after public hearing.
Another question. You said car repair. Now, are we talking about he's going to work on his cars, or will he take people, like I take my car down and get worked on? Is it going to be a car repair place like that?
My understanding is it's in regards to the sales side of things. It's not actually like a car repair place. You take your car to get it fixed, and then more or less you bring your vehicle. The sale cars that he buys and sells, he'll use that facility there to more or less fix up those vehicles in order to put them back on the showroom floor out there to sell them.
Working on his cars. Yeah.
Yes.
Any other questions for the applicant? Stay on the line, Rob, okay?
Sure.
Ready for our public hearing. This time I'll declare the public hearing open for REZ 20-029 for Mr. Alzabit. Anyone wishing to speak for or against this rezoning request, either in person or online, please come forward. Seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Commissioners. Any phone calls at all, Doug?
No, none on this.
I did hear him say, or am I correct that I heard him say turning lanes and traffic on Shelbyville Pike getting in and out would be?
It appears that they're planning on a right in, right out only.
There's no median cut right there, and there's not going to be one, so it's only going to be right in, right out.
And that'll have to be coordinated with TDOT during the site plan approval process.
Other questions?
Line? Starting line? No.
I don't believe so. No, just a controlled entrance that only allows right turn movements in and right turn movements out.
That is correct. At this point in time, we'll have to do analysis as we go through this with TDOT to make certain whatever we're proposing at the entranceway works out on that side, and Mike knows we'll coordinate that with TDOT.
That's what Candy Camper has to do that also.
Much like we dealt with on some of the other automotive places, is there a need for a truck turning template on this, or is it circulate okay, or are they not planning full semi-loads of vehicles?
Yes, they will need.
No, Mr. Elizabeth informed me that they'll be by tow truck or the small car carriers, no 18-wheeler vehicles. They'll be bringing vehicles to the site.
So we will need to see a fire truck.
Yeah. Yes.
Through here.
And I think there's some, like I said, this is a concept, and there's some places I think that that I can see as the designer. I think there's some stuff that we can work through on this as we go further down the pike if the zoning is approved, just from an internal corporate standpoint, but also one from the standpoint of safety.
Those car carriers to unload, they will go inside the property on.
Correct.
Yes.
Parked on the shoulder of the road like that.
No, Mike, I'm sorry. I know we've had a couple of these different dealerships show up on the radar here in the last 12 months on that side. And what Mr. Elizabeth has told me is that the vehicle carriers, whether they're the tow truck or the smaller car carrying flatbeds and stuff like that, those will pull into the property, unload on the grounds, and then exit the property correctly. Nothing on the side of the road.
Need a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve subject to all staff comments.
Thank you, Lee. Was there a second? Jim, thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve REZ 20-029 for Mr. Alzabet. Any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Charlotte P. Craig Lynch?
Yes.
David Jones?
Yes.
Jim Averwater? Yes. Lee Bogle? Yes. Marvin Whitworth?
Yes.
Mike Cush?
Yes.
Pettis Reed?
Yes.
Rhonda Allen?
Yes.
Jeff Phillips?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rob. Item 6DE has been pulled, withdrawn. It brings us to the end of our agenda. Let me remind you that our Monday morning meetings normally would be scheduled for the 23rd of this month has been canceled. That's Thanksgiving week. And our next meeting is scheduled for 6 p.m. That's 4 weeks away on Monday, December the 14th, here in this room. Once again, the next meeting is December 14th. Doug, you have anything else?
Just a couple quick announcements. Just a reminder that December the 14th, that date of our next Planning Commission meeting, we'll get together a little earlier just to have the session on the corridor overlays and whatnot. There'll be more information coming on that, so just stay tuned to that. The other thing I would like to say is I'm sure Gail is not watching at home tonight, but if you ever do come across her, thank her for everything she does and the job that she does here, because trying to do that with all this, you can see I didn't do a great job with that tonight. I definitely cannot multitask, so I just want to say how much I appreciate her, so that's officially on the minutes. So. That's all I have.
Thank you, Doug. And we do appreciate Gail. We do. Kind of more than we can say or have said at times. Saying that, let me say that I appreciate you guys. Tonight's agenda was lengthy, and we've been going for somewhere over 2 hours. The item on the agenda that would have probably taken more than 2 hours within itself has been pulled, and I'm assuming it will come back here in the future at some point in time. I would like to thank all of the residents of that area that showed up tonight to voice their opinions on that rezoning request, and would like to apologize on behalf of this commission that you wasted a trip down, and we feel for all of your planning and what you put into your presentations tonight, and sorry that you had to make the trip down. Once again, thank you for your patience, your attendance, your participation, and have a great Thanksgiving. With that, we're adjourned.